What a powerful start to this case. The prosecution wastes no time painting a vivid picture. Officers on the scene for over 20 minutes without flares, no safety measures, and then another tragic accident. Right away, they're pointing fingers at law enforcement. But the big question is, will that argument hold up in court?
I'm going to object to argument.
All right.
Over the shoulder.
All right, number one, the objection is sustained. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that's an improper argument. These are opening statements. Both parties are to inform you of what they expect the evidence to show you. And state your objection is sustained.
So I want you to think about why this happened. Why this happened, because there's only one person sitting in that chair today, and he's not the only one responsible for this. His actions are by definition not reckless. If anything, he ought to have known. He ought to have known. But to say
The
that
state walks us through Alexandra's final day, golfing, dinner, a movie with her boyfriend. Just an ordinary, happy day that ended in the worst possible way. These personal details aren't just for sympathy. They're meant to remind the jury of what was lost.
You may proceed.
On July 22nd of 2022, Alexandra Cyber was heading home. She had just spent the day with her boyfriend, Josh. They went golfing, they went out to dinner, they went back to Josh's apartment and watched a movie. Her home was her parents' house. In order to get there, she had to go north on 281. While she was on 281, she ran into traffic. Traffic as far as the eye could see. You're going to hear from Officer Morgan. He's a 3-year San Antonio Police Department officer. He was responding to the cause of the traffic. It was a car crash that happened further north on 281. Now, while responding to this car crash, Officer Morgan was notified of another car crash. It happened further south on 281. He was in his patrol vehicle, he got out, and he started walking over. But then he started running because he saw several cars that were very damaged. He ended up talking to two of the drivers of those damaged cars. One of those drivers was the defendant, Alexander Castro. Now, while talking to the defendant, Officer Morgan noticed a third vehicle that had been heavily damaged. It was a little further south. He ran. Inside that car was Alexandra Cyber. She was unconscious. She had an open head wound. She was bleeding heavily. She never woke up from that. EMS came and took her to University Hospital, and Officer Morgan began his part of the
The
investigation.
prosecution describes a chain reaction of disasters. First crash north of 281, then another southbound crash, and in the middle of it all, Alexandra's car. By the time Officer Morgan runs to check, she's already unconscious with a severe head injury. That image alone is devastating.
The investigation. Now, Officer Morgan's a patrol officer. Whenever there's a potentially fatal crash, patrol officers have to call SAPD's Traffic Investigation Division. They're the experts when it comes to car crashes. They can recreate, they can figure out how this happened. Officer Morgan didn't have any eyewitnesses who could directly say exactly what happened. So all of the drivers that were involved were kept at the scene so that they can talk to TID. But Officer Morgan made a mistake. TID told him to follow up. He didn't. While conducting his investigation, he spoke with the defendant several times. You're going to hear that. He asked why things happened. You're going to hear what the defendant had to say.
Stop it. Get some help.
I'm going to object to argument.
All right.
Over the shoulder.
All right, number one, the objection is sustained. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that's an improper.
Spoke to the drivers and began their investigation. You're going to hear from several of the witnesses, several of the people who were on the highway when this happened. They did not see what happened. One of the witnesses was involved. His car was half crushed in due to the defendant's car hitting him at a high speed. You're going to hear from several 911 callers who saw the traffic, who saw the long line, and decided to exit because that's how far away you could see this. They had enough time to exit. One of the 911 callers saw the defendant's vehicle speed down 281, approaching all the cars that were waiting there in traffic. He didn't see the accident. He saw the debris fly in the air. He heard the actual crash. You're going to hear from now Sergeant Martinez. She was a detective at the time with TID. She was the primary detective that was investigating this case. She looked at the roadway evidence. She looked at data from both Alexandra's car and the defendant's car. And she was able to calculate and figure out exactly how fast the defendant was going. He was going over 90 miles per hour. Never hit his brakes. Never made any attempt to avoid any of the cars that were so vulnerable there. State's asking you to listen to the evidence.
The prosecution argues that Castro never hit the brakes, never swerved, and was speeding at over 90 miles per hour. No attempt to avoid impact. That's the foundation of their recklessness claim. But here's where things get interesting. The defense is about to flip that narrative.
Just think about what we're presenting. Officer Morgan was disciplined for what happened, for not following up. He was also disciplined for not further investigating. And you'll hear from him why that happened, what happened there. But don't let that failure on Officer Morgan's part cloud you and how reckless the defendant's actions were. So the state's asking you, again, to listen and to judge how reckless his actions were that night.
Defense, any opening statements? Yes.
Thank you, Judge.
The defense opens with a bold statement. This tragedy is not a crime. Their strategy? Shift the focus to other players, especially Shayna Alisol, the woman who allegedly drove drunk the wrong way and caused the first crash. According to the defense, she's the real first domino that set this entire chain of events in motion.
This case is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. We have to acknowledge that up front. It is a tragedy. And Alexandra Saber lost her life as a result of this tragedy. But this tragedy is not a crime. And I'm going to tell you why it's not a crime. And I can agree with some things that Mr. Escobar said, but I disagree with others. I'm going to tell you the whole story about what happened that night. Because I tell you what, I didn't mention that name. Shayna Alisol. You're not going to hear her come as a witness. No criminal case filed against her. But Shayna Alisol is the first domino that caused this chain reaction where Alex drove into a scene of a crash. Shayna Alisol, you're going to see, evidence is going to show that Shayna Alisol argued with her husband. Shayna Alisol drank. Shayna Alisol drove the wrong way on Highway 281. She drove the wrong way up the exit ramp on 281 and had a collision with a vehicle. Shayna Alisol was driving the wrong way on the highway. But for the conduct of Shayna Alisol, the truth is, but for the conduct of Shayna Alisol, Alexandra Siebert wouldn't have been sitting on the highway, parked in that long line of traffic that Mr. Escobar talked about. Alexandra Siebert
Nice.
would still be here. She wouldn't have been sitting in the traffic, but for the conduct of Shayna Alisol. Now, she's not here. She wasn't arrested. Shayna Alisol was driven home to meet her husband that she'd argued with by the police. And I hope she's watching today, I hope she's watching and listening to this, because she's not here to answer for what she did that put that man in the chair there, where the state is trying to convict him of killing somebody.
The defense doesn't stop there. They accuse the police of negligence, claiming officers failed to set up flares or even warn oncoming drivers for over 20 minutes. They argue that this, by definition, is the real recklessness. This is a fascinating twist, putting law enforcement on trial inside a trial.
Now, was he driving too fast? Yes, but he was driving too fast on the right way, going the right way down the highway. So that's the first thing. The state talked about causation in the PowerPoint, in the voir dire. They said, but for the conduct of him. That's what they have to prove, but for the conduct of him, Alex. Miss Seibert would still be alive. But it's but for the conduct of her. But it's not just her. We're not just blaming Shayna Alassal, even though she did get drunk, drive the wrong way on the highway, have a collision, then get driven home by the police. Mr. Escobar talked about the police. Now, they do a difficult job. I used to be a police officer. Dealing with a scene like that is difficult, but they have got a responsibility. The police officers at the scene are the second domino in this chain of events that leads to the unfortunate death of Miss Seibert, because they've got a duty to protect. They've got a duty to warn. And like Mr. Escobar said, they were on scene for approximately, the evidence is going to show, the officers were on the scene for 22 minutes before there was another accident on the highway. They put out no flares. Everybody's seen an accident on the highway where the police put out flares. They didn't put a police vehicle in the way. They didn't call one of their buddies on the radio to say, hey man, can you go and protect the scene? There's some flashing lights so people don't crash into them. Any of that. No one put on a luminous bright green jacket to say, hey, slow down, slow down. No one did any of that. Now we talk about the definition of recklessness. That's what Alex is charged with. What the police officers did at the scene is the definition of recklessness. It just is. It's the truth. Because you've got to know about a risk. You've got to know about a risk, and then you've got to consciously disregard it. How do we know the officers consciously disregarded a risk that they know about? It's in their policy and procedure manual. And you're going to hear it from the sergeant who used to be a detective. It's one of the basic policies that the police have. One of the first things they do is warn. You go to a scene of an accident and you warn. You make it safe. They didn't do that. They just got focused in on the first accident while traffic was building up, building up, building up, building up, building up, building up for 20 minutes. Now, he might have been driving too fast, but he was driving the right way on the highway.
Things heat up when the defense calls out the state for allegedly trying to turn this into an intoxication manslaughter case. Castro admitted to having 4 beers 8 hours before the crash, but the defense says this is irrelevant. Their key point, common sense. Why would anyone knowingly drive into a brick wall at 90 miles per hour? They argue it defies logic and even suggest suicide would make more sense than recklessness.
Shayna Alassal wasn't. She's the first but for. The officers are the second but for. Now let's talk about Alex. Let me talk about Alex Castro. Talk about him. And it's going to happen throughout this trial. And I want you to watch out for it, please. State is trying to turn this into an intoxication manslaughter case. And it's not. He was out for 8 hours before this accident. And you're going to hear from him. You're going to hear from him on the videos talking to the officers. He said, I had 4 beers earlier, man, at the driving range. 8 hours before this happened. They're trying to turn this into an intoxication manslaughter case, and it's not. And they're trying to do that because recklessness is presumed. And they can't prove it. Don't let them do it. It is not. Don't let them play on your emotions so that you turn it into that. It's not. He's got to be judged on whether he was reckless or not. What does reckless mean? Remember what we said about reckless. Reckless is you know of a risk. You know of a risk, and then you say, no, I consciously disregard it, which means I know that traffic is stopped. Traffic is at a standstill in front of me. And this is where we're going to ask you, this is why we picked you guys. This is why I'm glad
Yeah, boy.
you're on the jury, because we're going to ask you to use your common sense when you look at this evidence, because apply your common sense to this. What the state is saying in this charge, this is why he has to be not guilty, because they're saying that he knows that there's this risk, but he disregards it. So they're saying that he's driving, the state's just said in opening that he's approximately driving 90 miles an hour. He's driving too fast the right way down the highway. So if he's disregarded the risk that he knows is ahead, remember, they've got to prove, and you swore an oath a minute ago. The judge gave you the oath. You swore to follow the law and the evidence. This is the last thing I'm going to leave you with. If you follow that oath, you've got to swear to follow the oath, to look at the law, which is that Alex Castro was aware of a risk and he consciously disregarded it. It doesn't make any sense, because you're saying, this prosecutor's saying he's doing 90 miles an hour and he's driving into a brick wall, because that's what they're saying. That's what recklessness is in this case. He is driving 90 miles an hour, according to the prosecutor, into a brick wall. That can't be the case. It makes no sense, because that means that's suicide. That's tantamount to him trying to kill himself. Common sense says that. If you are driving at the speed Mr. Escobar says he is, and you're driving into parked traffic, you're trying to kill yourself.
Sustained.
You're trying to kill yourself.
Object to argumentative.
Sustained.
And that defies common sense. You see, I'm right. That's why he objected.
And then, a dramatic moment. The judge interrupts, sustaining objections and warning both sides about their tone. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The judge reminds everyone, this is serious, emotions are high, and respect must be maintained. This isn't just law. This is a battle of narratives playing out in real time.
I'm going to object to argumentative.
All right.
Over the shoulder.
All right, number one, the objection is sustained. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that's an improper argument. These are opening statements. Both parties are to inform you of what they expect the evidence to show you. And state your objection is sustained.
So I want you to think about why this happened. Why this happened, because there's only one person sitting in that chair today, and he's not the only one responsible for this. His actions are by definition not reckless. If anything, he ought to have known. He ought to have known. But to say that he knew and then he disregarded it means he's driving into a brick wall at 90 miles an hour. And that makes no sense. Shana Alasso's the first domino. The police officers are the second in their investigation, failing to warn, failing to do anything to protect Alexandra Siebert. And she's a good person. I never met her. I've seen a lot of evidence about her. She did nothing wrong. It's a tragic thing. And you're going to hear, and it's
Sustained.
Judge, it's opening statement. It is
All
argument.
right, counsel.